Welcome back to Global Nurse Network, the podcast where we cut through the noise to bring you the hottest tips, tools, and stories to fuel your nursing career. I'm your host, Rachel Cole, RN and healthcare advocate, and today we're diving headfirst into something that's reshaping bedside nursing as we know it, AI-powered nurse documentation tools. Specifically, the top 15 voice-activated EHR systems rated by ICU Nurses in 2026. Joining me today to break this down are three experts who've not only tested these systems, but lived them in high-stakes ICU environments. First up, Dr. Priya Kapoor. Hello, Priya. Priya is a critical care informatics specialist and ICU nurse manager at Massachusetts General. What's your coffee order, by the way? I'm trying to picture you at 3 a.m. charting.
Rachel, you're killing me with the coffee question. It's always a Vinny black coffee with 3 extra shots. And Rachel, 3 a.m. charting is my superpower. I've become one with the fluorescent lighting.
Love that. Next, Marcus Boone is here. Marcus is a nurse informaticist and former ICU charge nurse with nearly a decade of experience implementing EHR systems. Marcus, you've seen it all, from paper charts to voice-activated AI. What's the wildest change you've witnessed in documentation over the years?
Oh man, Rachel. Remember when nurses had to whisper ambulation? Right arm, steady gait, into a dictaphone while a patient's monitor beeped in the background? Those were the days of me losing half my notes. Now, AI catches everything, even my sarcasm.
Last but not least, Dr. Elena Vasquez. Elena is a healthcare AI ethics researcher and emergency nurse practitioner. She's here to help us navigate the murky waters of bias, privacy, and does this thing actually listen to me or just my patient's groans? Welcome, Elena.
Thanks, Rachel. Though I have to say, after listening to Marcus romanticize dictaphones, I'm half tempted to dig one out of storage. Just to confirm, the AI tools we're talking about today are not recording my rants about charting inaccuracies, right?
Oh, Elena, they absolutely are, but we'll get into how to set boundaries with your digital scribe later. For now, let's talk about why this matters right now. If you've ever felt like documentation is eating your soul between 7 p.m. and 7 a.m., this episode is your lifeline. By the end of today's conversation, you'll know exactly which AI-powered, voice-activated EHR systems ICU nurses are raving about and why you should be advocating for them in your unit. Whether you're drowning in notes or just curious about where nursing tech is headed, stick around. This is nursing's next big upgrade. Now, let's start with a reality check. AI and documentation isn't new, but voice-activated EHRs for nurses? That's the shiny new toy everyone's talking about, and Priya, you've worked with some of the most cutting-edge systems out there. Can you paint us a picture of what ICU nurses are actually using in 2026? And spoiler, it's not just Siri with a stethoscope.
Rachel, I love that you called it a shiny new toy. Because that's exactly how some nurses treat it, until they realize it's the difference between leaving a 12-hour shift with a laptop fused to their spine or actually feeling like a human. In 2026, the top-tier systems ICU nurses are gravitating toward all have a few things in common. Real-time speech-to-text accuracy above 98%, integration with vital sign monitors so you don't have to manually transcribe that BP of 180-110, and this is key, they adapt to your voice patterns. So if you slur morphine after 14 hours, the system still gets it right.
Wait, adapt to your voice patterns? Priya, are you telling me these things learn my coffee-fueled mutterings? Because I've been known to call a patient's oxygen saturation an O2 sat after midnight. Will the system still know I'm not ordering a pizza?
Marcus here. Rachel, you're preaching to the choir. I once had an AI system write a progress note that said, patient denies recent ingestion of illicit substances or large pepperoni pizzas. The system was right. So yes, Priya's spot on. These things learn your clinical dialect. But here's the catch. Marcus, back up. How much training does it take to get these systems to stop mishearing Lasix as latex?
Oh, Marcus, you're stuck in 2024. Modern systems use contextual AI, so if you're in the ICU and say push 40 of Lasix for, it knows you're not talking about glove material because the pharmacy module just sent the order. But you're absolutely right that early adoption required a lot of babysitting. I remember one system kept inserting patient is here into every note because the nurse said present so much during rounds. Took 2 weeks to retrain it.
2 weeks. That's longer than some of my patients' hospital stays. Elena, you've studied the ethical implications of this tech. When you hear about systems that need weeks to understand basic nursing language, does that set off alarm bells for you?
It absolutely does, Rachel. And Priya and Marcus are laughing because they've lived this, but for nurses who aren't tech-savvy, or units with high turnover, a 2-week learning curve can mean dangerous documentation gaps. I've seen cases where new hires avoided using the system because it kept misclassifying their notes as incomplete, leading to delayed treatments. The ethical concern isn't just accuracy, it's ensuring every nurse, regardless of tech comfort, can use it safely from day one.
That's a critical point. So, what systems are actually solving this problem? Marcus, you've implemented several. Name 3 that ICU nurses have given a thumbs up to this year.
Alright, let's get tactical. First up, Nurses AI by MedTech Solutions. This one's a favorite in Level 1 trauma centers because it integrates with Epic and Cerner seamlessly, and their contextual flow feature means you can dictate a full admission note while the system auto-populates vitals from the monitor. I've seen it cut documentation time by 30% in our burn ICU. No small feat when you're charting second-degree burns every 15 minutes. Next, Clara Voice from Voice Nurse Labs. Clara's claim to fame? She's built by ICU Nurses for ICU nurses. She uses what they call procedural prompting. If you say, start vasopressors, she'll immediately prompt dose, rate, titration goal. So no more missteps because you were distracted by a code. And third, DokaPilot by IntelliHealth. This one's picked up steam in pediatric ICUs because it's the only system I've seen that includes a pediatric-specific lexicon. So if you say grunting respirations, it won't suggest a grunt-related intervention. It'll code it correctly. Plus, it has a night shift mode that darkens the screen and lowers the volume of non-critical alerts, so your brain doesn't fry at 3 a.m.
Those sound incredible, but I've got to ask, what's the catch? Every system has trade-offs. Elena, you've warned about bias in AI. Do any of these perpetuate disparities, like mishearing accents or not adapting to non-native English speakers?
Unfortunately, yes, and this is where the rubber meets the road for nursing ethics. Clara Voice, for example, was found to have a 12% higher error rate with nurses who spoke English as a second language in a 2025 study. The issue? Its training data overrepresented Midwestern U.S. accents. Nurses AI performs better because they used a dataset that included ICU nurses from diverse backgrounds, but even they have gaps with heavy accents from certain regions. The good news? DokaPilot just rolled out a language calibration tool where nurses can record sample dictations to train the system to their voice, regardless of accent or language fluency.
That's huge. So docs can take ownership of their tool's accuracy. Priya, as a manager, how do you approach rolling one of these out in a unit where half your staff is skeptical because of past EHR trauma?
I'll be honest, Rachel, it starts with listening. Last year, we piloted nurses in our neuro ICU, and the nurses who hated it initially were the ones who'd been burned by clunky EHRs before. So we set up focus groups where they could vent and test the system in real time. The key was letting them customize the voice commands. One nurse, Maria, kept saying give Lasix 40, and the system defaulted to Lasix 4 milligrams. She wanted 40. We adjusted the dosage thresholds in her profile, and suddenly her productivity shot up. Now she's our biggest advocate.
That's the kind of buy-in we need. Marcus, you've seen systems fail because leadership didn't prepare the staff. What's one mistake you see over and over in rollouts?
Hands down, it's rolling out the system during peak census. You think you're doing a great job training staff during a quiet week? Wrong. Then flu season hits, and the ICU is full of sick kids. And now you've got new nurses trying to learn voice commands while a patient's crashing and the system's mishearing push AP as push an apple. Not ideal. The other mistake? Treating it like a tech upgrade instead of a workflow upgrade. These systems change how you think about documentation, not just how you enter it.
Elena, let's talk privacy. If these systems are constantly listening in the background, how do nurses protect patient confidentiality? I've heard horror stories about devices recording private convos outside patient rooms.
That's a valid concern, Rachel. The good news is that most systems now have a privacy mode, literally a physical button or voice command that mutes the mic when you're not actively charting. But here's the thing, most breaches happen because nurses forget to mute it when they're discussing cases in the break room. I've seen it happen. My rule of thumb? Treat your AI scribe like a patient's family member. If you wouldn't say it in front of them, don't say it to the system. And for heaven's sake, don't joke about patients' BP being higher than their attitude in the room.
Fair. Okay, let's shift gears to the nuts and bolts of advocating for these tools in your facility. Priya, what's the most compelling argument you use with hospital leadership to get them to invest in voice-activated AI?
Data, Rachel. Hard numbers. I tell them, documentation burnout costs $2 billion annually in nursing turnover and overtime. Voice-activated AI that's ICU optimized can reduce documentation time by 25 to 40%, which translates to increased patient throughput and lower staffing costs. And then I hit them with the stick. Every hour a nurse spends charting is an hour not spent at the bedside. And in our ICU, that's the difference between a patient coding or stabilizing. But the real win is when you can say, this system pays for itself in 18 months by reducing duplicate charting and errors. That's when the CFO wakes up.
Marcus, you've crunched the numbers too. Any specific ROI metrics you use?
Absolutely. Let's talk duplication. In our unit, before Clarivoice, nurses were spending 15 minutes per shift duplicating data from monitors into the EHR. That's 15 hours a day across a 12-bed ICU. At $45 per hour, that's $675 wasted per day. Multiply that by 365, $246,000 a year. And that's not including the errors that came from manual entry. Now, Clarivoice auto-populates 90% of that data. The math is brutal, but it's undeniable.
That's a no-brainer. Elena, what's the biggest myth you hear about AI in nursing documentation?
Oh, that AI will replace nurses. People hear automation and think job loss. But the reality? These tools are here to augment us, not replace us. The systems that succeed are the ones designed with nurses in the room during development. AI can't advocate for a patient when the doctor dismisses their pain. It can't hold a family's hand during a code. It's a tool, not a teammate. The best systems free up nurses to do what they love about nursing, connecting with patients and making critical decisions.
That's a message we need to pound into every administrator's head. Marcus, you've got a story about a system preventing a near miss. Can you share that?
Sure. Let me set the scene. It's 0200, post-op cardiac patient, BP 8040, barely responsive. The resident writes for volume resuscitation, but forgets to specify the type. So the system prompts me, clarify, NS, LR, or blood product? I caught that order before it went through. Without the prompt, we could have given LR to a patient with sepsis, big no-no. That's the kind of guardrail these systems put up that paper never could.
That's the kind of example that should be in every policy manual. Priya, you've seen systems fail spectacularly too. What's the hallmark of a system that's doomed to crash and burn?
When it feels like an extra step instead of a shortcut. I'll never forget testing a system at 2 a.m. where the nurse had to say, open documentation mode, select acute care, choose cardiovascular, click on progress note, dictate. By the time they finished all that, the patient's sat dropped. The winning systems integrate with one voice command. Start my note for room 5. 0 clicks. 0 memorization. Just flow.
That's the dream. Let's talk about the future, because 2026 is right around the corner. Elena, you're deep in AI ethics research. What's one ethical red flag you're already seeing with these tools?
The biggest concern I have is data ownership. These systems are collecting massive amounts of patient data, Not just vitals, but nursing language patterns, decision-making timelines, even emotional cues and voice tone. Who owns that data? The hospital? The vendor? And how is it being used? I've seen cases where vendors sell de-identified trend data to pharma companies to improve outcomes, but in reality, it's often used to tweak drug dosing algorithms to favor certain medications. Nurses don't even know this is happening. We need transparency and consent frameworks now.
That's chilling. And it's why I'm glad you're on this episode. Marcus, from a practical standpoint, what's one question every nurse should ask their facility before adopting an AI documentation tool?
Ask, does this system store data in the cloud? And where? A lot of vendors will say HIPAA-compliant storage, but then you dig deeper and find out it's hosted in a country with weak privacy laws. Also, ask about upgrades. Some systems push updates automatically, which can introduce new errors mid-shift. Others let units opt into updates, critical for stability. And finally, ask who's responsible for auditing the AI's accuracy. Too often, it's the nurse who gets blamed when the system fails.
Powerful questions. Priya, final thought for our listeners. If they're inspired to advocate for these tools in their unit, where should they start?
Start small, pilot a tool in one area like a step-down unit or a specific shift, with a group of nurses who are tech-curious. Measure everything. Time saved, errors reduced, staff satisfaction. Collect real data, not just anecdotes. Then take that data to your nurse manager, director of nursing, and don't take no for an answer. Frame it as a safety issue because preventing errors and burnout is a safety issue. And if they still say no, well, Rachel, tell them to listen to this episode again.
Mic drop. Seriously, this is the kind of advocacy that changes nursing for the better. Before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to give a quick shout out to our amazing guests. Dr. Priya Kapoor, Marcus Boone, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, thank you for bringing your expertise, your humor, and your real stories to this conversation. This isn't just theory, it's the future nurses are already living. Now, if you're listening and thinking, this sounds amazing, but how do I even begin to research these tools? Head to our show notes. We'll have direct links to the 15 systems we mentioned, plus Priya's Nurse Advocate Toolkit for rollout strategies. And if you're a nurse who's already used a voice-activated EHR, drop us a comment. What's your holy grail feature? We're all ears. All right, everyone. This is Rachel Cole, RN, signing off temporarily. Remember, the tools shaping the future of nursing are being built right now. Will you be part of the conversation? Dr. Priya Kapoor, thank you for sharing your research and your passion for ethical AI. Marcus Boone, your perspective as a bedside nurse bringing this tech to life was invaluable. And Dr. Elena Vasquez, thank you for keeping us grounded in the human side of these systems, because at the end of the day, it's all about the patients we serve.
And thank you, Rachel, for hosting us with so much energy and clarity. Y'all out there, go advocate for what works. Your patience and your sanity will thank you.
That's Discover Now. If you enjoyed this episode, hit subscribe and follow us on social @Nursin. We're on all the major platforms, and we'd love to hear your voice there too. And for all the tools, checklists, and links we talked about today, visit nurse.giftstribe.com. That's it for this episode. Until next time, stay curious, keep advocating, and take good care of yourselves and each other. We'll see you soon.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this, hit subscribe and follow @Nursin on social media for more from Global Nurse Network.